Good morning. It is just about the 5 a.m. time here on Old Mighty Sparrow up in Maine, and it's freezing cold. Holy cow, it is cold out. It's got to be in the low 40s up here right now. But I want to do a little update on the old Golden Globe. Golden Globe 2022. We've entered essentially, I think they started let's say they started right in the beginning of August, August 1st. So let's see, well, right around the first. So essentially, we're in the first month of this race, and so far we've had three people drop out. Uh, One American, one Canadian, and Mark Sinclair, I believe, is Australian. They've all had to pull out of the race. Probably the most dramatic is the American guy. He ran up on the rocks in the where did he run up? Cape Verde Islands, I think. Yeah, there's his little boat right there. They've got a great or no, not the Cape Verdes. Was it? No. No, he ran aground up in the Canaries. Oops. But yeah, so the fleet has made it just south of the Cape Verde Islands off of the coast of Africa, and they have now entered pretty much the proper doldrums. And if anybody wants to look at sort of the updates, the Golden Globe does a great website, just Golden Globe Race, and they have a live tracker. It shows basically everything that's going on. And so yeah, all these racers, there's let's see, it started with 16. So there's 13 of them all south of the Cape Verdes and all well into the doldrums area. And pulling up sort of the weather forecast and everything. And while it was blowing like crazy yesterday here in the boatyard, for them, they are fully in the doldrums. There's a little bit of a trade wind breeze up there by the Cape Verdes. But just south of that, they're hitting the no-go zone, and there's a big area that's coming off of Africa following a little bit of a tropical wave that's just going to halt everybody, even more, and it's so frustrating to be in there, and I couldn't really imagine what it would be like to be in that situation and you're trying to race. You're essentially doing your best job to be able to move that boat. When I'm down there, I can pretty much just decide that I can float here and enjoy the beautiful scene and the huge clouds and the stars at night, and I'm not worried about making any moves or anything like that. But these folks are down there absolutely probably tearing their hair out trying to get every single last little puff of breeze and keep moving forward because it's a pretty competitive race, but they're doing all right. When I look at the actual weather that they're seeing, and there's always going to be a pretty big gap between the weather that you see on the forecast and the weather that they're actually dealing with because the doldrums are really like a little isolated area. Lots of little storm cells, so you can all of a sudden get really lucky with a nice big squall, and it'll just throw you in the right direction, and then all of a sudden you're leaps and bounds ahead of the other people. But right now, just checking on my other American. There's only one other American now that's actually in the race, and that's Elliott Smith. He's towards the back, but with the race this long, it's not so much your position unless you start just pulling so far ahead. It's insane. But the doldrums is kind of a crucial area because once you break free of the doldrums and cross the equator and start heading into the southeast trades, you're pretty much in good wind. So you're going to be sailing at full speed, which for most of these boats is only about 5, 6 knots. And then you're just breaking away while the rest of the fleet is dealing with doldrums like conditions for what can sometimes be days. And if you get 3 or 4 days of a head start like that, then you're talking, close to 500-mile lead, which again can be a little bit hard to make up. But at the same time, the Southern Ocean has that sort of way about it where you might get 3 or 4 days in a gale and you're flying, and then you are stuck in no wind for a couple of days, and you end up sort of inchworming your way around the planet in the Southern Ocean. But it's pretty cool when you go to their live tracker and you see every single last person. You can click on them and see their speeds. And right now, some of them are pointed in the wrong direction, going point 9 knots. Elliott Smith right now, for instance, is doing point 0.9 knots, but at least he's headed south. Some of the leaders have sort of broken into a little bit better air, and they're doing about 5 knots of boat speed. So good on them. But I think the biggest thing is the frustration level that a lot of these sailors are probably going through, because as you come down from the Canaries, you've typically got the Portuguese trade winds, and so you're cruising really fast. You're doing like a broad reach, so the boat is like maxed out. You're making huge miles, and then suddenly, boom, you get hit by a wall, and the doldrums just sort of stop you. And so mentally, sitting there on a boat that's fully prepared and you want to just keep going, and it's the beginning of the race and you've been out at sea for a month, so you're kind of used to ups and downs, to just be absolutely at a standstill and be looking around and seeing squalls and clouds and things around you, and there's nothing you can do. It's really frustrating. It's really hard. And I would think the isolation that these sailors are feeling because they can't reach out and communicate with other people via sat phone or anything like that. They just have to sit and wait. They don't know if the winds are going to pick up at any point, or anything really. So it's got to be pretty frustrating little time. But as for the rest of the race, these guys and one gal, Kirsten's doing really well. I think she's in like third place overall. She's down there with the leaders. But the next stop essentially is going to be or not stop, but the next point is the equator. They get across that, and then they're pretty much full on in the southeast trades. And typically, the closer they are towards Africa as opposed to South America, the winds are going to be coming further, more out of the southeast rather than the southeast. And so you sort of hit that, and then your boat is pretty much heading right towards Brazil. And it's kind of a pinch point in a way, because if the currents are pulling you up back towards the Caribbean, the wind is pushing you towards Brazil, and if you can't make it around that point, you essentially have to turn north again and try and gain more east miles before heading south. I can remember every time I've had to do this, it's always a bit nerve wracking, because you're just sort of watching the boat slowly side slip over towards Brazil, and you're like, oh, I just want to go south. But once you do get past, usually about 5 to 10 degrees south latitude, past the equator, then you're feeling pretty good. The southeasterlies turn more east, and then you can just keep gunning due south. At that point, really the South Atlantic is just a gateway to get to the Southern Ocean, where the action will truly begin. So we'll all be looking forward to that. It should be in the next couple of weeks, probably by the time November starts. I believe most of these racers will be deep enough in the South Atlantic where they will be dealing with some of the major weather events down there. South Atlantic's a pretty spooky place. When I read the stories about the first Golden Globe and what some of the sailors went through in the South Atlantic, mostly Bill King and Motissier's friend who was down there. They both went through like a horrific, like hurricane strength storm, and ended up rolling Bill King's boat, and he ended up out of the race. But even just looking at the Southern Ocean right now, and granted it's early, it's still the late winter, early spring down there. Uh, it's ugly. It's really ugly, and there's a lot of big systems. And uh, when you see that, and you know you're headed towards it, it's pretty scary. I know that feeling for sure. But luckily, they don't know. They can't. Only the ones that have actually done the race before or done the trip before, they're the only ones that have any idea what they're heading into. And good on them for wanting to push back down into that area, because it is always a big roll of the dice. But yeah, I wish all these sailors luck, and it'll be interesting. We're gonna keep following them and doing little updates here and there. I think the doing them on the live is pretty decent little way to go about it. And that's about it for this morning. So, oh, good old Maine. Gonna start work here pretty soon, and then go from there. So, thanks for watching. And this was Golden Globe 2022 update.